I'm going to call the Municipal Building Authority meeting to order. The first item of business is approve the minutes of June 12th, 2019. We have a motion for that. To Councilmember Anderson.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, a second by Councilmember Whitelock. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote. Is it all aye? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None. Public hearing, 3A, receive public comment and consider for approval Resolution 19-101, adopting the final budget for the City of West Jordan Municipal Building Authority for fiscal year 2019-2020. Denise Steck.
Wrong button. There are no changes for the tentative budget on the Municipal Building Authority, so we present the final budget to you as it was presented as a tentative and adopted 2 weeks ago by the council. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or hear any comments if you have any. Thank you.
Any questions from council for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Anyone from the public wishing to address council regarding, or the board regarding this issue, please come to the microphone. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to council for the board for a motion or for discussion on the public hearing, excuse me. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none from council, Councilmember Lamb.
I'd like to make a motion. I move that we adopt the final budget for the City of West Jordan Municipal Building Authority for fiscal year 2019-2020, approving Resolution 19-101.
Councilmember Anderson.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lamb and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote. No.
Board Member Burton,
Aye.
Chair Riding,
Yes.
Board Member McConaughey,
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
We have a motion to adjourn the municipal building and open the redevelopment agency building, agency meeting. Councilmember Whitelock.
I move to do what you just said. You've got them in a different order than this agenda.
Okay, that's what I have here on my sheet. Do we have a second on that one? Councilmember Anderson.
I'll second that motion.
So, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? First item of business on the redevelopment agency meeting is business item. Approve the minutes of June 12th, 2019. Councilmember Whitelock.
I move we approve the minutes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing 3A, receive public input and consider for approval Resolution 19-216, formerly listed as Resolution 19-122, adopting the final budget for the City of West Jordan Redevelopment Agency for fiscal year 2019-2020. Denise.
Thank you. Again, the redevelopment agency budget has not changed since it was presented to you as a tentative budget and approved 2 weeks ago, and so we would submit it to you as a final budget in its entirety. And thank you.
Any questions from the board to staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing on this issue. Anyone from the public wishing to address the board, come to the microphone. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to the board for any discussion or a motion. Councilmember Whitelock.
Move approval of 19-216.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock, a second by Councilmember Jacob. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Board Member McConaughey. Board Member Burton.
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock.
Yes.
Chair Riding.
Yes.
Board Member Jacob.
Yes.
Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
And Board Member Lamb.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Shall we, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the redevelopment agency meeting and open the Fairway Estates Special Service Recreation District meeting. Councilmember Lamb,
I move to adjourn the redevelopment agency meeting and open the Fairways Estates Special Services Recreation District meeting.
and Councilmember Whitelock.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Business item 2A, approve the minutes of June 12, 2019. Any discussion to that? Seeing none, all in favor? Oh, yeah, is there a move to approve? Sorry,
I'll move to approve the minutes.
and a second.
I'll
Councilmember
second that.
Lamb. We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock, a second by Councilmember Lamb. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none? We move to 2B, approve resolution 19-121, setting the 2019 property tax levy for the Fairway Estates Special Service Recreation District. Denise Steck.
Thank you. We are going to propose that you accept the certified tax rate as calculated by Salt Lake County for the Special Service District. The tax rate is .001180. It will provide $10,118 of property tax revenue for the Special Service District. That's $18 more than we estimated, and we request that we use that $18 in miscellaneous services as it's budgeted. And so that's the request is to amend the budget by $18 of revenue and $18 of expense and to set the property tax rate. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you. Just a quick clarification, because it seems like there's a contradiction between the summary and the motion recommended, because it said the summary says the rate's going to be .001999, and last year, 2018, was 001180. But then the motion recommended says let's set it at 001180.
Thank you. I apologize. That's me. It is 1999999, and last year was 11800. That is feeling not right.
Yeah, usually.
Give me a
like,
moment.
Drops because of the
I
value.
apologize. That does not feel right. I feel like it is much less than that.
Mayor, I move.
We have to adopt the rate, so I apologize sincerely. I believe that's the city's rate, and I messed that up on that summary.
While you're
That's
looking
fine.
that
Mayor,
up,
I move
we
that
come back to that.
we table this item till later in the meeting and proceed with the public hearing.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
I'll second it before we vote.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed to that? Seeing none, we'll move to the public hearing. 3A, receive public comment and consider for approval Resolution 19-122, adopting the final budget for the City of West Jordan Fairway Estates Special Service Recreation District for fiscal year 2019-2020. This brings a question to me is, do we approve this before we approve the tax levy? Is there any problem with doing that?
My apologies. The correct rate is 1180. Last year's rate was, it just went down, 1253. So I apologize, that 1180 is correct. I was typing too many resolutions. That was completely my fault.
Okay, so I go back to my question.
So,
You adopt the budget with the additional $18 of revenue as certified by the Salt Lake County certified tax rate, and then you will follow it by adopting or setting the property tax rate.
Well, then I think we need to go back and approve business item 2B first. David or Corbin, any comment from staff on that? Councilmember McConaughey, you had a comment?
Yeah, a while ago. I was just going to comment that we could proceed with the public hearing portion and then revert back to the business item and then take action after on the public hearing. But since we have the numbers, it's kind of a moot point at this time. We can
Yeah,
regress
that's what we were
and then
going to
move
do
forward.
until she said that she had it corrected, so let's go ahead and do business item 2B. Is there a motion? Councilmember McConaughey.
Move to adopt resolution 19-121, setting the 2019 rate at .001180.
Councilmember Lamb.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Lamb. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Board Member Burton,
Aye.
Chair Riding,
Yes.
Board Member Jacob,
Yes.
Board Member McConaughey.
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
and Board Member Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. Public hearing 3A. Receive public comment and consider for approval Resolution 19-122, adopting the final budget for the City of West Jordan Fairway Estates Special Service Recreation District for fiscal year 2019-2020. Ms. Peck has already addressed that. Is there questions from the board to staff? Seeing Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, with the attachments, this says resolution 19-122 in the agenda, but when we open up the attachment, it's 19-121. It looks like the same item from the business item. Let me double check. 121, both of them say 121, 19-121. Okay. So from the recorder, the attachment for 3A should actually read 19-122, not 19-121. So when it comes time for a motion, there you go.
Okay, thank you. We'll now open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this issue, please come to the microphone. Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Come back to the board for comments or a motion. Councilmember Whitelock.
I'll move to adopt resolution 19-122.
Councilmember Anderson.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Jacob,
Yes.
Chair Riding,
Yes.
Board Member Lamb,
Yes.
Board Member Burton,
Aye.
Board Member Whitelock,
Yes.
and Board Member McConaughey.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Councilmember Burton.
I move that we adjourn from our Fairway Estates and move into city council meeting.
Second. Councilmember Jacob. We have a motion by Councilmember Burton, a second by Councilmember Jacob. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? We will begin our city council meeting with a pledge of allegiance led by Greg Davenport.
The audience, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We'll now move to citizen comments. Anyone wishing to address City Council this evening will have 3 minutes to do so. And so if anyone is interested, please come to the microphone, state your name.
My name is Jay Thomas, and I'm president of the West Jordan Exchange Club. And I come before you to thank you for your support of our club and for the Field of Flags in particular thanks for the fire department and the Parks Department. They were great to work with, had a lot of public feedback saying they really enjoyed the Field of Flags. I think it's a really good community event, and it's a good partnership between the city and a private club. So I want to thank you again for your support. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm David Newton, and you know how to reach me. A few weeks ago, we had an orientation for... Okay. The staff, under the direction of Mr. Ricky, put forward, and it was a very, very helpful orientation, so thank you for that. I don't remember having that happen before, but it may have done so, but I enjoyed that. Thank you. During that time, there was information given about a number of items, among them temporary signs, which includes our political signs. I learned at that point that political signs cannot be on city property. They cannot be on state property. They can be on public property with the permission of the property owner. Sorry? Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. On private property with the permission of the property owner. That is correct. So I also learned during that meeting that the state, that signs were being put on state property, but that the state wasn't doing anything about it. My point tonight being that regardless of whether the state or UDOT decides to take those signs down, they are illegal. And at least 4 of us here are running for election and have run for election before and know what the laws is. So what I'm asking is that we set the example. We set the example for the other 16 candidates that are running and take efforts to remove signs that are not legal. I know sometimes campaign workers put up signs and they don't know exactly what the law is, but we do. I found one out on U-111 of mine that I didn't know, and so I took it down. I think we have a duty and an honor to honor our code and be an example. I look up to you guys. Each of you have done a wonderful job and have put yourself on the line. When we take that oath of office, we raise our right hand to the square and say we will obey the laws of the state and of our city. So I intend to do that, and I would hope that each of us would also do that. I love this city. I have been here for 46 years almost, and what a great time it's been to raise my family, my children, and I want to see us continue to grow and be honorable in our city. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address council this evening? Seeing none, I will close citizen comments and come to communications, beginning with our city manager and staff.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I would like to update you on a meeting I had this past Friday with the contractor Kilgore, who's working out on the road there by the airport, just above 78th. And there were electronic signs that indicated a particular lane would be open on Monday. It was not open. As a result, we had a gathering of all of the Kilgore representatives. We had representatives from Rocky Mountain Power. It was a very productive meeting. We have a very good understanding of how to make sure we're communicating better with both the public and with you as council members. I got a commitment from Kilgore to double down and work over weekends. They worked this past weekend. I believe they will also work this coming weekend, both Saturdays and Sundays. They believe they will have that road opened on July 3rd. That's not a guarantee. We are up against soft spots and weather, but from the effort I've been seeing from Kilgore, I appreciate what they've done so far to try to correct a mistake that the community has had to deal with. I don't want that to happen to you or to them in the future, and I don't believe Kilgore wants to see that happen either. They're making an effort to fix things. So with that explanation, if there are any questions I can answer about that, I'd be more than willing to try.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, this is a very hot topic, at least in my district, probably in Councilmember Jacobs' district. Are there things we can do as a city better in communicating with the contractor so that they know who they need to contact when issues come up, so they're not just kind of making decisions to do things based on a non-city advice?
We got a commitment from the franchisees that are in the roadway. That's an interesting part of our city. Just to the north of the road, it's owned by Salt Lake City. And Salt Lake City has franchise agreements that we're not being kept advised of. So we have started to reach out and make sure we're getting updates on those people who are in the roadway. And Kilgore is helping with that. At the same time, we've also started to talk about how to do pre-planning and pre-drilling in the future projects to help identify if there are people in the road that we're not aware of as a city, how to have Dave Clemens reaching out to those franchisees and try to figure out how to motivate them to come to the table and do walkthroughs and make sure that they're communicating with the contractor. In this instance, last November, Dave Clemens sent a notice to everybody that we thought was in the roadway to notify them of the upcoming construction. Once the construction began, we identified at least one, maybe two franchisees that we were not aware of. So working with Kilgore and Dave Clemens working with Salt Lake, we're going to try to get franchise agreements as far as passing through our city that we didn't have before, so that if something expands in the future, we'll avoid this problem. So a little bit of learning on the fly, and we're going to make implementations and changes to the process so it doesn't happen in the future.
Okay, I'm glad we're making progress, but that is a frustrating area, and I know people have posted about police, ticketing folks that are making temporarily improper turns. I don't know, I'd sent an email to Brian about getting the left arrows turned off while it's closed, or the turn arrows off while it's under construction, because I think that sends a confusing message to the residents that here's a sign that says, and even though the sign preempts the arrow, I think it sends a confusing message when we have a sign that says no right turn, and then everybody's stopped, so the right turn arrow has 20 seconds of right turn that they're not supposed to make. And so I just think there's a way we can do better, and I appreciate the efforts you're making in improving that process.
We identified trying to send people in different roadways to alleviate the pressure that was taking place there. I think Greg Davenport and his team tried to get those signs up as soon as possible to try to move people around the area. We'll continue to coordinate with UDOT to make sure that the signs or the signals are coordinating with our visual signs as well. We're learning on this experience, and hopefully we'll not see this type of mistakes in the future.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor. That's the only question I have.
With that explanation of what's going on out there, I'd like to invite Corbin to give an update on some insurance information, as well as Brian Clegg next.
Council members, we left at your seat a packet from Olympus Insurance. Olympus is our insurance broker. We have each year between a very quick turnaround at the end of June to get our insurance renewed, and so that it takes effect July 1. As such, this is a window of opportunity I want to take to update you on our insurance renewal and just let you know what we're looking at for this next year. This packet has all kinds of details. Councilman Anderson, I apologize. I know you didn't have a packet there. I'll rectify that as soon as I can. I'm not sure what happened there. In this packet, generally our insurance renewal this year is very good. Our rates are relatively flat and all of them as a whole come in under what we have programmed in the budget. So we didn't see anything that was unexpected. In 2011, the city chose to leave IRMA and to go with a partial self-insured program. Since that time, we have seen a great savings in our insurance premiums. We've been taking that savings and putting it towards our reserves, because as we have a self-insured program, we need to have healthy reserves to cover any gaps in our insurance coverage. Currently, we have about $330,000 in budgeted reserves. We have had much more than that in the past. Frankly, we need to get that back up. We've used it for a number of things appropriately, but at this time now, our reserves are a touch low, and so over the next few years, Denise and I and you as a council will need to work to find ways to identify areas in the budget where we can put money into those reserves to get them back up to a stronger level where I'd like to see them covering all aspects of our insurance gaps. In this packet, there are just really quickly a few highlights I want to show you. Tab 1 is a list of our property insurance. The 10-second highlight of our property insurance is that we have $75 million in property insurance coverage. This represents about half of our total property value on our property schedule. We have about $143 million in property value on our schedule. $75 million of insurance for that coverage with a $100,000 deductible per site. Now, in our insurance, they define a site as buildings, facilities that are within 1,000 feet of each other. So, for example, City Hall, the fire station, and the Justice Center is one site. But each well house, booster station, the Parks building, the Public Works building, et cetera, those are separate sites. So if we had a catastrophic earthquake, we would have a $100,000 deductible per site that needed to have replacement. Our insurance schedule has a our insurance premium has a $14,000 increase this year. That's largely due to trend. Property insurance rates across the country are going up. We do have a small increase in our total valuation, about a 1.8% increase in our total valuation. So that accounts for a portion of the increase in our property insurance premium. Overall, that's a pretty small increase for the amount of insurance we're purchasing there. We're happy with that return. Frankly, we have a very good company, AFM. They're a subsidiary of FM Global. They're a very good property insurance company, and our rates are very low because we work with the AFM to make sure we are doing best practices with how we maintain and operate our buildings. Tab 2, this is a brief summary of our general liability insurance. Just a couple of things I want to mention about our general liability insurance. We have a base $1 million policy and a $10 million buy-up. So in other words, we have about an $11 million general liability insurance policy. We have buy-ups for things that are normally excluded. For example, law enforcement liability, management liability, employee benefit liability. We buy additional insurance to cover any gaps in our policy coverage. This general liability insurance went from $240,000 in premiums to $258,000 in premiums. Again, a very good rate for $11 million in general liability coverage. On tab 3, this is our cyber insurance policy. We have a $5 million cyber insurance policy. It's a pretty liberal policy. There's not very many exclusions in this. And that policy is $26,000. That policy covers us for For example, if we were to have a ransomware attack, if we were to have some kind of hack from a cyber lapse, a cybersecurity issue that affects our water system, our payment system, something like that, this policy would kick in. This is a very good policy and frankly, a good amount of coverage for that type of policy. Tab 4, this is a brief summary of our workers' compensation insurance. Our workers' compensation insurance is going up $31,000 this year. We want to keep working on our experience modifier. That experience modification, it's called an E-mod. We have a 1.05. What that means is we're paying about 5% more than the average for our type of organization for workers' compensation insurance. That's based on our rolling, I believe it's a 3-year history of claims, our rolling average of claims, and they take, I believe, an additional 3 to 5 years to fully mature those workers' compensation claims. That's something we need to work on. Frankly, we've been doing very good as of late. We've had very few workers' compensation claims as a city, very few over the last year. However, we have a couple of claims from previous years which are still on our trend, which is keeping our E-mod a little higher than we'd like.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. You kind of touched on it briefly with our claims. Are we pretty consistent trend-wise on workers' comp claims, or are we seeing different class codes that are seeing a higher claim rate than other class codes? I mean, are we pretty consistent, or are there? You
mean from department to department, or from year to year?
Class by class code and by year to year. Are we pretty?
We're trending down from year to year overall, based on the last year, which is very good. From class codes, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look in terms of the employee, the employee classification codes get different kind of charges based on whether they're a police officer versus a clerical worker and so on.
Right.
I haven't checked on those, how those are trending independently of each other.
But the aggregate of the city, we're decreasing is what you're saying.
We're decreasing in the last year, yes, but this is going up because our E-mod is sticky high because we have a 3-year rolling average. So from a couple years ago, we've had a couple of claims that were expensive, and those are still on our history right now.
Okay.
When those drop off, we expect that E-mod to come down.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Just more of a logistical question. Obviously, this is more than just a simple update, and this is the first time we've seen it. We're already well over 6 minutes into this, and we're only halfway through. Would this be better tackled as an agenda item at a later time so we can properly ask questions, review, rather than adjourn remarks?
Sorry, Councilman Kalahani, I'm done. That's it. I do think it's good to give you a more thorough update on our risk management program, our insurance program. My update in terms of this renewal, though, that's all I had.
I did have a number of questions about this because we're seeing things like with the facilities, there's unnamed locations for $1 million. There's locks and keys. So I don't necessarily want to delay folks that may be here for the public hearings, but it seems like it warrants better conversation. So I guess I can follow up with you later, but my request would be in the future if it's something that's like this, it would be either distributed in advance or agendized as a business item, preferably both. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Clegg.
Thanks, Mayor. Just one piece of information. I think you guys, Dave Naylor sent this out earlier. Just a reminder, we have the Surf Invitational Tournament that starts tomorrow. It goes through it starts on the 27th, it goes through the 29th at the soccer complex. We all know that traffic gets pretty heavy in that area when we have tournaments, so just giving you guys a heads up. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to council comments, and we'll start again. Let's go down the row again. It's a little less complicated. So, Councilmember Anderson.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Already talked about 7800 South, and it would have been nice to have that second lane for this tournament, but I'm sure my phone will be ringing. We've talked a lot about Denise and her preparation of the budget, and I wanted to make sure that Eric Okerlund, who's done our budget for many years and was involved with this budget, also receive commendation for how our city budget was prepared. And I've talked to, I think, both of you about with the wet spring, you know, I think it was Justin or Brian told me that we're down 1,000 acre-feet of water, but that's only about 15%, so we're still within our contracted rate. But I also noticed that I think two out of the last 3 or 4 planning commissions have been canceled. And I'm wondering if that's a trend we ought to be concerned about, or do we know what it is? Does that have an impact? Would that have an impact on our next year's budget if we're not having permits pulled? Or, I mean, that's really the only 3 things I have for comments.
Go ahead, respond to that if you would, please.
Sure. It is an anomaly. Early summer, we typically see applications drop a little bit. This year is a little bit more, simply due to the fact that instead of, you know, a half dozen applications that will potentially develop 200 acres, we're getting larger applications for bigger tracts of land. So I think that has an impact, but we're on track with the developments in the pipeline to easily meet the projected budgets.
Okay. That's really all I had for comments. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to give a thanks to our city manager and our police chief, such as it is, relay it. For the communication this morning, I got to see some police activity up close and personal. As I was opening my garage to leave this morning, I heard several sirens, and then as I pulled out of my driveway, I saw several cars around the corner from my house, and whenever that happens, my phone rings a lot. So I texted over to Mr. Bricky and said, can you just give me an idea what's going on? And so a little while later, he texted back, which is good. Don't interrupt anything by all means. But it was good to get that update that I could pass along then to concerned neighbors and things. And kudos to the quick response. I think there were 8 police cars around the corner from my house this morning, so that was kind of fun. Just wanted to say thank you again for all you guys do.
Councilmember Whitelock.
My comment tonight is I want to thank but also convey a message for people that I represent that like the ones that are calling Councilmember Jacob, live in my neighborhood. We live in a neighborhood that our only exit, we have 2, and they both exit onto 9000 South, right by Bangerter Highway. And it's very hard to get in and out. And I've been working with Senator Harper and have encouraged my neighbors to call and write letters as well. And we have learned that we are going to get some signs that say, please do not block the intersection, and some striping or some white something on the ground, which will be very helpful. But all of you need to know that it's still very dangerous. Coming here tonight, it took me extra long to get out. And kudos to the citizens in our city, because oftentimes 2 cars will stop when they're blocked by the red light. So they will make a way for you to get out. But the problem is then people are using the center lane that's not a driving lane. Well, they're using it as a driving lane. And tonight, the guy in front of me almost got hit. And I've personally seen 2 accidents there. So if anyone has any inroads with UDOT or Senator Harper, our neighbor could you really use help with that, because it's dangerous, and I don't want someone to die because we decided that there's too many rules and we can't think outside of the box to keep over 130 homes and their residents safe. So anything that anyone knows, that would be great. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder that next week is our favorite holiday in West Jordan, July 4th, with our rodeo coming up. I just wanted to kind of put out and not make a decision now or do any voting with the council, but we've talked a few times about the parade and what we want to do as a council. So I just want to put a quick note tonight that we need to still discuss that, because at this point, I've had probably 4 or 5 of us trying to figure out what we're doing for the parade on July 4th as far as a council and planning commission, et cetera. So I just want to put that out there, but also want to thank the Rotary Committee as well for all the work they've done. I know Chris McConaughey's been helping out as well as a council member. They do a great job. Our Rotary Committee does a great job, and we're gonna have a great rodeo this year. So if you aren't planning and you're listening online or you're here tonight, make plans to go to our rodeo next week. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Along with the rodeo part, the events committee have been busy getting ready for all the other events that happen at the same time. So thank you for them for putting the work together, and I think we're gonna have a great week next week. So I got to go to the Xfinity ribbon cutting last week. The mayor was there as well, so that's a new store over in Jordan 19. If you haven't been there, go check it out. You don't have to go as far now to get your parts for Xfinity if you want to get those going. I had an opportunity just, last night, when a couple of the council members and the mayor were there, where we had our public open house for the flyover on 8600 South. I think that was great. I want to thank those public who came and participated and asked questions and brought things up, and that's good. More people are involved and get their opinions out there, the more we have things that don't get missed, and the better we have in West Jordan. So thanks for those who participated.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. 2 items. Number 1, last time we met, I had missed my notes, one of the items I wanted to bring up, and that was thank you to our city clerks for the time and effort that they put in during the week of candidacy declarations. I know they're here till late on Friday taking care of everything, and then stayed extra late on Friday night to prepare the agenda for Wednesday to get everything published for us. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that's done there. And actually, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 5, public hearing. 5A, receive public input and consider for approval resolution 19-123, amending the special assessments fund for fiscal year 2018-2019. Denise.
Thank you. This would be the final budget amendment for this fiscal year before you adopt the next year's budget. This is for the Highlands Special Service District. There's been an unusually strong snow plowing need in this area this year, which put it over budget by about $52,000. We do have about $40,000 of additional revenue in the special assessment area. And then we will be using $12,000 of reserves, which will bring it down to like less than $5,000 of reserves. However, this area, or this fund was not created, and this area was not created to have a real strong reserve in it. And so I think that that's okay, that it comes down every now and then if there's a need that arises. The additional $40,000 did not come from a change in rate or fee to this area. It came because there are additional homes in this area that are contributing to the fund. So there was no additional rate increase to bring in that additional revenue. It was just under what was budgeted, and there was new growth in that area. Otherwise, this budget is healthy and can handle the $52,000 increase, but it is needed to cover the snow plowing expense that has already occurred this year.
We have some questions for you. First, Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So that additional revenue, are we increasing the tax on the residents to cover that, or where does that come from?
The revenue comes from a fee that was assessed to that district, and that fee has been the same. It is just in excess of what was originally budgeted. The budget was actually very conservative when it was prepared last year, and so the additional $40,000 is what's actually come in, and it was because there are new homes that have added. So as a new home is built in that area, they add the fee. So it's a combination of the budget was actually a little too low for what actual revenue came in. Just for instance, last year, the actual revenue was about $52,000, and the budget was actually only at like $40,000. So the budget was actually really low. So we're bringing it up to what is, we actually will collect. And again, there were no changes to taxes or rates. It is collecting the same fee from each household in the district.
Is there a sunset on this? How long will this continue?
There is not a sunset on this. This was an agreement between ourselves and the developer to provide services.
So when that development gets completed, then the residents could choose to turn it into an HOA or continue
would
to
be
use the city or
awesome.
whatever they like. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. You mentioned the reserves would go down to $5,000. I just want to make sure we don't have any obligations in this district, like we do with water, that requires us to maintain a certain level of reserves.
Thank you for that question. We have no obligations outside of providing snow plowing and some landscaping maintenance.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. This question is for either you or for maybe Brian. The snow plowing you're referring to that was increased above expectation, is that not on city public roads already? Or is that something having to do with that special district?
City staff plows the arterials and all the main roads. This is, the snow plowing that's being done is consisting of trails and sidewalk areas that safe walking routes to the schools and stuff. That's what that consists of. And it's so much for every push after,
Right.
and it's estimated per inches of snow. So 1 to 2 inches is a certain amount. Well, we got a lot more than 1 to 2 inches. So that's where you're seeing the escalation at. So-
Right, okay. My question was more geared toward what is being done above what is done for the rest of the city streets, where they're already paying city property tax, that they're paying extra property tax to have extra plowing done. That answers it with the trails and the other amenities that they have that we maintain for them.
And that goes along with the landscape. It's a higher level of maintenance with the $15 per resident fee. That's what was agreed upon, so.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
With that, I will open up the public hearing to anyone in the audience that would like to come and address council regarding this issue. Please come to the microphone. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to council for further discussion and or a motion. Councilmember Anderson.
Not seeing anybody push their buttons for discussion, I'll move to approve Resolution 19-123, adopting the amended budget for the Special Assessments Fund for fiscal year 2018-2019 by the $52,000.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Never mind, I'm a little concerned about that 52,000, so I need to reread.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, a second by Councilmember Jacob. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you. Does it say exactly 52,000, or was it 52,000 and change increase?
52,000 even.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes?
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
And Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing item 5B. Receive public input and consider for approval Resolution 19-124, adopting the final annual budget for the City of West Jordan for fiscal year 2019-2020. Denise.
Okay, so the property tax rates were certified by the Salt Lake County Auditor. The revenue came in at $27,411 in excess of what our estimates were. Our estimates were very strong this year. And so we are asking that in the budget that you adopt, we receive the additional $27,411, that we allocate those funds to Public Works to provide the installation of some safety equipment in the front reception area. So it would just be receive the revenue and then put it into Public Works. They don't have any safety barrier between the front desk and the public entrance to the Public Works building. And so we believe that with changes in the recent environments, there may be some risk there, and they would like to put a safety barrier up there.
So Councilmember Anderson, these are questions from council members for staff. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Does the 27,000, is that going to be able to provide for all of it, or are we going to have to find others to complete the task?
We believe that that will cover the general funds portion, because that area is shared with all of the other funds, the fleet fund and the water fund and all of them, that we believe each of them can contribute a small amount to putting up that safety barrier. The one that we put up in finance, I hear, is about $50,000, and they probably could put up something similar in that area.
Okay.
That's what they're hoping for anyway.
All right. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So I have the same question that I had last year, and I'm going to look at Mr. Bricky. I'm not opposed to making our staff more safe. I'm opposed to the picking and choosing that we're doing, because I'm not sure how we're picking and choosing who we're keeping safe this year. Last year it was finance. I think a year or two before that was code. But I still, in my mind, if I'm gonna get mad at the city, it's that office over there that I'm gonna come and get really mad at. And I don't think those folks are protected at all. So it troubles me, because I want everyone to be safe. So I want to know the plan for making everyone safe, not our piecemeal plan.
Well, in working with the police department and identifying what the traditional threats are looking like, it's first floors where most of these attacks are taking place. So we are looking at making first floor entry-level locations safest and then working our way upward. So you are correct, the third floor does not have some of the barriers that are in place on the first floor, but they will be getting those eventually. But the first floor is exactly where this is located out at Public Works. When you pass through that first set of doors, it's right there where the staff is right in view of that front door. So that is how we made that determination. We're also looking at what budgets are available. I'm not trying to spend money that we don't have. We're spending money that we actually have and can use it in this regard for those reasons.
So my follow-up question would be, how often does the public come to the Public Works building?
That question probably be best answered by Mr. Clegg.
All day, every day, we get people in and out.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. This comment's not directed to any of our current staff, because I know the design for this building goes back to our prior city manager. But it's kind of disappointing to see us having to throw $30,000 into a building that had its grand opening less than a year ago for improvements that should have been incorporated into the original design. Again, I know, Mr. Clegg, you weren't in your position. Mr. Bricky, you weren't city manager at the time, and it doesn't fall to either of you. And I know we've had this conversation, so I thank you for looking for opportunities for other projects. But just wanted to make sure it's on the record that it's not, the current staff that are sitting here are doing a fantastic job trying to fix the problems that are out there and make sure that we don't run into the same projects or the same problems again. It's prior staff that are no longer with the city that allowed this to be an issue. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. My thought is, when I go to a counter and it's got those glasses in there, it doesn't make me feel more safe. It makes me feel like, wow, am I in a bad neighborhood where I have to have this barrier in here? And I finally agreed to the one downstairs because of the amount of money that transacts through there, and that someone may be wanting to steal some of that money in some fashion or another. I don't know, do we work money through the Public Works building? And the other thing is, I notice when I go to the Public Works building, before you can get into the door, they have to pop the button to unlock the door, let you in. So they see you and decide to let you come in before you even get in through the door. Is that not correct?
That's at the courthouse, but not at the Public Works. There's a button you can push after hours to gain access, but during the work hours of 8 to 5, that front door should be open for the public to pass straight through in.
Would we want to maybe, if that's going to be a safety concern, make it so they do need to push the button to let them in so that they control who comes in when they come in?
That would, we could look into that. It would require some additional technology to be able to communicate with the people outside, but we could look at that. I'd like the idea of people passing directly into the lobby. There's a place where people can sit. We have informational monitors that were designed for public to be able to see. I don't like the idea of making them stand outside in the rain or snow.
I agree, but I like the idea of having to go in, you feel like there's a barrier there, like they're automatically, they're like, we don't trust you. That's how I feel when I go to those places. Fortunately, when I go to most stores where a lot more people go and some of them are less friendly, they don't have that. I don't know, I like to think if we could come up with a better idea and make people feel comfortable when they visit City Hall and visit Public Works. And that's my 2 cents.
With that, I will open up the public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak to council regarding this, please come to the microphone. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to council for further discussion and or a motion. Councilmember Jacob.
I just had one quick question for staff. Normally, this kind of a thing would have been like a green sheet item in the budget process. Was this a supplemental request that just, I know none of them got approved, but were there some submitted that weren't even considered and we just said don't even submit them or whatever it was? You know what I mean? Did this come up in the budget process as something that would be desired but not funded because we didn't have the money? It could be either Brian or Denise, either one.
It wasn't a green sheet. This was based off of the actions and the shootings that happened most recently in Virginia. Staff was on edge. We talked about it. That's kind of, it came after the green sheet process.
Gotcha, okay. I'm kind of a little bit torn on it just because I recognize that need and that edge and that safety issue. But I also know this budget is drawing from reserves, and anytime you find extra funds and you're already taking it from reserves, and oh wait, we're making a little more, maybe we should take a little less from reserves. Or this should have been maybe something that we took from reserves anyway if it was a high priority. So I'm just a little bit torn on this, on getting this tonight at kind of the last minute. So contemplating, it's probably fine, and I probably would have been fine with it coming from reserves in the original tentative budget, and having it be something that, look, this is something we need. Just coming here at this point just is kind of giving me a little pause. So that's just what I'm thinking.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. See no other comments. I move to adopt Resolution 19-124, adopting the annual budget with the increased revenue of $27,411 and allocating that to the Public Works budget.
Councilmember Anderson.
I will second his motion. Thank you.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Whitelock.
I just want to thank all of the staff that's worked on all of their budgets because, as Ms. Steck has pointed out on numerous occasions, that she asked staff to dig deep and to look hard at where they could help her make up what she saw was a problem for our budget, which was lack of money. And they did that, and so I want to thank all of them that helped, and particularly finance that worked through that. I appreciate it. Thank you for all your work.
Seeing no more discussion, let's vote.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing item 5C, receive public input And consider for approval ordinance 19-19, proposing a general plan land use map amendment and rezone of 0.4 acres of property from community commercial to very high density residential and rezone from SC-2 Community Shopping Center zone to R-3-22 SHO multifamily residential 22 units per acre maximum density senior housing overlay. Zone for Highlands Landing located at approximately northeast corner of 5600 West, 7800 South. Peterson Development LLC, Justin Peterson applicant, Scott Langford.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, Ray McCandless, senior planner, has been working on this. We view it as a housekeeping item, but in an effort to be as transparent as possible, we're bringing this to you, and Ray can give you a quick synopsis of their request.
Council, this is kind of, as Scott mentioned, kind of a housekeeping item. I've just got a couple of quick slides to show you, if I get this on. There we go. This is the property. It's located just on the northeast corner of 7800 South and 5600 West, just across the street from the Smiths. The property here is zoned SC2. Back in January, the applicant had come before the Planning Commission and received preliminary approval of this 9-lot commercial subdivision, which they intend to develop at some point in the future. And as part of that, the street took a little bit of a jog here, which doesn't follow the current zoning district boundary lines. So this is the line in blue shows the current zoning boundary line between the R320 SHO, which is basically a multifamily residential zoning district with 20 dwelling units per acre. The SHO is senior housing overlay. The SC2 is just a commercial shopping center zone. So the blue line shows where the existing zoning district boundary is, and also it shows where the dividing line for the future land use map. Really, this is very simple. It's basically changing the zoning district boundary line and the future land use map from the blue line to where the red line is, so that it follows the center of the road. Again, it's just kind of a housekeeping issue, so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
We'll start with Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question for you, Ray. The packet says R322 as the proposed zone. I'm sure that's a typo. I just saw it in two different places, so I just wanted to verify that that's a typo. It's R320.
It's a typo.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thanks.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Is that road there right now?
No, it's not. It's all vacant.
So they could put the road wherever they want?
No, they'd have to follow the subdivision boundary line, so
So
that's.
if we don't approve this, they would put the road where the blue line is?
No, this is, to keep in mind, this is just a rezoning request and a future land use map amendment, so, it's really, they could subdivide only a portion of that, and it wouldn't change anything, so, or where that road goes. It's just, like I said, it's had preliminary approval, and it's just shifting that road where it's located makes sense, because it'll serve as access to both this and this in the future.
Okay, because I remember this come up before, so did that just get missed, or did they change their mind for the location?
Oh, for the location? No, it's just something that has come up since they submitted that subdivision.
Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah.
You've already answered this question for the Planning Commission, but I want to get it on record here as well. So, going back to the minutes from the Planning Commission, Kelvin Green wanted to be just crystal clear that changing the zoning here would not allow for any more units on the land. You at the time said that is correct.
That's correct. We don't see any issue on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Is this whole development part of a development agreement, or does it tie into some of the development agreements we have with Peterson?
Not that I'm aware of. This is new.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We are currently working on a reimbursement agreement, but the council has not seen that yet. That's to do with some water and sewer line projects that we have along the Loop Road and 5490, but to date, no, there's not an agreement with them on this particular property.
Okay, that commercial space, even though I'm not a fan of the SC2 zone, I mean, I think shopping centers have changed in this economy. But I would hate for that parcel for the Highlands Landing commercial subdivision and that lot 203, 204. Well, yes, all of this is SC2 except back there, huh? Okay, so I just would hate, some future council in a future year, we can't get any commercial in there, we're just gonna put houses. So I was just trying to see if that's.
If that were the case, they'd have to come back before the planning commission and council to rezone the things.
Okay. Thank you.
Seeing no more questions, I will open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to address council on this issue, please come to the microphone. And as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes, and please state your name.
Caitlin Nichols, 225 South, 200 East. I'm representing Peterson Development tonight, and Ray covered pretty much everything. It's a fairly simple amendment. We're just adjusting to match the subdivision as we've come to find it. When we rezoned in 2017, we didn't have specific tenants signed on, and so our site plan, our concept has changed a little bit to meet some of the tenants that have come forward in the last couple of years. So that's why it's amended or moved a little bit, but we're not looking to get more units. We're just trying to match the lines so it's more accurate in the zoning and land use map for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to council for further discussion and/or a motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Move to approve ordinance 19-19.
Councilmember Lamb.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Lamb. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Anderson.
I just want to make sure that the recommended motion says R322, and I just want to make sure that the motion that Councilmember McConaughey made is referencing R-3-20.
Yeah, if possible, there's the recommended motion up above, and I jumped down to the bottom below, and it's actually in the ordinance itself that it has a typo. So I would like to replace my motion with a new motion to approve ordinance 19-19, but changing that R-3-22 and referencing 22 units per acre maximum to R-3-20 and 20 units. That's both in the header and then paragraph 2.
And Councilmember Lamb.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey amended and a motion by, or a second by Councilmember Lamb. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Anderson. Councilmember McConaughey, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a third spot in there as well. Now, therefore, it is ordained by the City Council of West Jordan that, one, it's also got the 3-22 in there as well. So there's 3 places, and then also a 4th place in between the 2 property descriptions. And I think that's it. So those 4 changes from 22 to 20.
Okay. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Just a comment, not really a question. I'm glad to hear that there's some tenants coming. So that's a good thing. Thank you.
Okay, let's vote.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
And Mayor Writing.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Public hearing item 5D, receive public input and consider for approval resolution numbers 19-134 and 19-135. Resolutions authorizing the mayor to execute a lease agreement and a grant agreement between the West Jordan Historical Society, Inc., a Utah nonprofit corporation, the society, and the city of West Jordan, the city. Corbin Lee.
What you have before you tonight are two resolutions to approve. One, to approve a lease agreement with the museum. A second, to approve a separate grant agreement with the museum. We've worked hard with the museum to come up with a lease and a grant agreement that we think is beneficial both to the museum and the the museum and the city. The terms are outlined in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Essentially, this is a 2-year term lease agreement with 4 additional 2-year options to renew for a combined possible total of 10 years, but it would be reconsidered every 2 years. The city will continue to lease to the museum about 1.3 acres of land, just here immediately north of Veteran Memorial Park, to the museum as long as the museum continues to operate a museum on that site and operate the museum in a way that's open to the public, publicly noticed, has regular noticed hours and so on. The grant agreement would provide $6,000 to the museum to assist with the operations of the museum, subject to budget appropriations set by the city council.
With that, we have questions from council for you, for staff, starting with Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. Corbin, I did some modifications on the contract you did and sent a copy. Did you receive that copy?
I did, yes.
Okay. May we include that as part of this public hearing for when the public speaks, so they can speak to that? Is that permissible?
The public can speak to anything they would prefer to speak to regarding this.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. This is kind of a change in form of government question. I noticed there is a section in here that says the renewal is at the sole discretion of the mayor. With this being an ordinance, is that, how does that work? Because if this is legislative, then that should be something that the city council has oversight over. But if this is something executive, how does that work if this is an ordinance?
We'll turn to our city attorney for that.
Thank you, Mayor. I can answer that. There are certain legislative powers that you can delegate, and there's certain administrative powers you can delegate. This would be an administrative power that you're delegating to the mayor. The lease sets out the possibility of the renewals, and you can delegate that decision-making to the mayor.
Okay.
Now, whether you do or not, that's another question, but legally, that's the analysis.
That answers the question. I'll save my opinions and conversation until after the public hearing. Thank you, Mayor.
Seeing no more questions, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this issue to City Council, please come forward to the microphone. State your name, please.
Yes, my name is Bonnie Fernandez. I'm here tonight to urge you to pass these resolutions and agreements between the city and the West Jordan Historical Museum. As individuals, we place a high value on our personal family histories. I would hope as a city that we would place a high value on our community history. I'm a big fan of the museum, and I don't pretend I'm anything else. I watched it grow from the very beginning when a dilapidated old home was turned over to the Historical Society. Since then, it has blossomed and is now a museum complex. And it has a lot of features that are just terrific. It has the largest collection of our own local artifacts and memorabilia in West Jordan. It displays local farming interests, and one of the unique features is it has an exhibit honoring and respecting the boxing families that placed West Jordan on the world map. The Fulmer brothers and Marv Jensen. Along with some of the background history that you've received in your packet, the Historical Society has many other honors. One of them is they are a Blue Star Museum, which honors and gives benefits to military families. They were selected to be one of the museums exhibiting the Museums on Main Street Smithsonian Traveling Exhibit, featuring the New Harmonies, the History of American Roots Museums. It was a terrific exhibit, and we were very honored to have that. Another thing that they had was they were selected as the exhibitor museum, the only one in the state of Utah, for the Ellis Island, the Lost Murals exhibit. If any of you saw that, you certainly remember it because it was extremely moving. If you didn't, you missed it, but it was something that our museum was extremely honored to present. My very favorite event at the museum is the Pumpkin Walk. This is where families come together from all over the city, and it's geared towards the kids, the young kids, and they have a blast. It's just fantastic that we can do this. One more thing, I'll give you a quote. A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. I ask you to preserve our roots and keep them well watered. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address us regarding this issue? Please state your name.
Jaylyn Thomas. I just want to address the importance that I hope that you will pass to continue to support our museum. A couple of years ago, we had a big development fight where a developer claimed to care about our community. Wrong. But Maverick did, and we were able to get a group of people together and metal detect that area. What we discovered supported the building, the home that was built there in 1883. We found a watch fob that was from the 1889 World's Fair in Paris for the Birkendahl Kirkendall Jones Shoe Company. The owner, the person that lived in that home was a shoemaker, West Jordan's first shoemaker. We also found a uniform button from the Grand Army of the Republic. Those are things that I have not presented to the West Jordan Historic Museum. But with the new development coming in, Brinkerhoff Bluffs, I have talked to that developer, and he is very willing to let us metal detect that ground to see if we can find any more of our pioneer history and see what we can save. But last week, my friend that I had met metal detecting died in the Dominican, and he should be home today, and his funeral will be Saturday. So I would ask the Dalleys if they would be willing to frame that for him, in honor of him, because if it wasn't for him and his group of friends, those things would be gone. They would be lost forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council on this issue?
Hi, I am Linda Daly. I am the president of the West Jordan Historical Society and the director of the West Jordan Historical Museum. I'd like to thank you for your interest in all the work that has gone into getting this renewal done. I'd especially like to thank Corbin. He has spent endless hours on this, as Councilman Burton has also, even though the museum I don't believe is in his district, but he is my representative, and the members of the museum board, some of which have donated 20 years to the museum. Pardon my shaky voice. We are an all-volunteer organization. Everyone comes to the museum for the love of history and community. We have a lot of things that we've accomplished over there that have nothing to do with history, that came as really a surprise to us. We have been a sponsor of the Salt Lake Early Intervention Program, which gives young people from the age of 8 to 18 a chance to come and work off court time that they have received for doing bad deeds. So for 18 years, we've offered that opportunity, and some of these poor kids have never even held a rake or seen a chicken, and they get to come over and pick up eggs and dig in the dirt and have a blast. They set up things for the pumpkin walk. They've helped us build fences. It's incredible what we've done. The challenge of today's history is to involve young people and to keep the next generation wanting to come and to keep it alive. We have sponsored more than 250 Eagle Scouts at the museum. Several people on the dais, their children have received those awards at the museum for the work hours they've contributed. The museum has been honored by the Salt Lake Scout Council as one of the main contributors to the Eagle Scout program. We also have received a Best of State nomination for one of the best examples of a public-private partnership. When the museum opened, we were breaking new ground. We didn't even know what kind of a contract or a lease we should be looking for because we didn't know where we were going. So I really like the idea that Corbin had of a separate lease agreement and a service agreement. It's not perfect. There's probably things that we'll still want to change as time goes on. But I feel that it's pretty good. It's about as close to what we were hoping for as we can get. I would urge you to please approve it. If you have a question or a concern, please let me know what it is. And again, we'd like to thank you for your support and your friendship. On October 19th, we'll be having our 16th Pumpkin Walk. Jordan Valley Hospital is our main sponsor. We'd like to invite you to come over and bring your families. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Newton, most of you know that I support that museum 100%. We owe Bob and Linda Daly a debt of gratitude for what they've done for this city. We couldn't buy what they've given us there, so I support that. And to Councilmember McConaughey's question, the council should make the decision on whether the renewals and grants come forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council on this issue? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and come back to council for further discussion and or motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me, a couple items that I wanted to bring up. First one was in the grant. I didn't see this in the lease agreement where, well, with the grant, it says the renewal option is at the sole discretion of the mayor, provided the city council supports it. Meaning if the mayor decided not to put it in the budget, it sounds like the city council wouldn't have authority to put it back in and still pass a budget that contains that. So
You could still put the money back in. You'll notice when you start doing a budget as in the new form of government, the mayor presents it, but ultimately the council, you get to slice and dice it and do whatever you want as to how you allocate the money.
It's still the council's budget in
It
the
is.
end, which is why I was a little bit thrown off seeing that it was the mayor's sole discretion to renew the grant.
And that's entirely up to you. I don't know exactly why it was written that way. We wrote it that way, based on the negotiations that took place.
So,
Let me clarify one thing I said. I didn't really say that right. You as a council get to decide the legislative portion of this, which is funding it. And then, of course, in this form of government, approving the agreement. And then the carrying out of the agreement is left to the executive. That's why it's legal to have the mayor, executive make that decision. Whether you choose to do it that way is up to you.
yeah, so the four, that's fine, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too far. But the four changes that I would make, number one, I would remove the clause about in the mayor's sole discretion. Number two, there's a section in there that talks about they shall maintain a website. Websites does seem rather vague. Does that mean like a Facebook page is sufficient, or do they have to host a standalone website along with that?
You'd have to ask those that negotiated it what they thought. I don't know.
Well, my thought is, I like leaving that vague. I would actually like to be able to piggyback on top of the city's website, since many people see that as the city museum, it's on city property. Which brings us to the other item on page 4 of the contract. There's a clause that says neither the city nor the museum logo can be used to convey anything other than a tenant-landlord relationship. I would like to add the clause that says without a written agreement, so that we do have the option. For example, for the pumpkin walk, I'd like to be able to market that through the city's website. Again, it's part of our park, it's on our property. I would like some instances where we can co-brand there. So I don't want it ruled out, but I would like to have something written so it's very clear for both parties when it's appropriate. So I would just add at the end of that logo usage section, without written agreement. And then the last item that I wanted to ask, I see where it allows for closure in January and February due to weather. I would suggest it might also be appropriate between Thanksgiving up through New Year, because it's very cold, very few daylight hours. You have a lot of activities going on with the holidays. Allowing for the closure, I think would be appropriate, but it doesn't preclude them from being open for special events. But I thought that would be appropriate to allow that. So those are my 4 changes. Number 1, changing the verbiage of the grant, so it removes the reference to mayor's sole discretion. The website comment, I'm okay saying they shall maintain a website as long as that's vague enough to be some sort of web presence. Number 3, the logo usage, as long as that says like without written consent. And number 4, allow for closures between Thanksgiving and New Year on top of the January and February that's already in the proposal. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this is a question for Corbin, for Chris, but with all those changes, do we need to have them bring this back?
If you can get the changes worded into an articulate and very clear motion tonight, and that you pass it.
We'll let Chris do the motion. I just want the public to know that we as a council have been supportive of the museum and the whole time that I've been on the council. We talk about it, we want what's best for it. I will say that I think the only thing that we've really discussed that maybe we don't agree on is the hours when it's open. Sometimes when I'm up here, I like to take off my council hat and just talk as a citizen. In the 20 years I've lived in West Jordan, I've driven by that museum and I've never seen it open. And maybe I wasn't paying attention one time, but so my only concern was, as a citizen, I don't know when it's open. I never see it open. It always looks like it's closed up, you know, for the day, for the year. I'd like to see some Saturday hours where it's open. I know when you go to Logan or you go to other cities, you'll drive by, whether it's a Tabernacle or something on their main street, and they'll have a sign out on a Saturday, you know, we're open, come on in. So I think we're fully supportive of this, and I want it to go forward tonight. But I would like to look at hours again and see if there's an opportunity to let the public know it is open, because I don't think many do know it's open or see that it's open. And then my last comment, I just wanted to bring up waivers for the park that we've just discussed ad nauseum for 2 years. Between the $6,000 and the $55,000, that's about $50,000 or $64,000 per year. Although this is not a waiver, it's similar to our waivers we've been giving That total is more than all of the waivers that I think we've approved this year. So as we think about that, remember, this is similar. Here we are waiving fees or waiving costs that the city won't recoup, but we're not losing anything. We're gaining a great museum, we're gaining a great opportunity, and I will support this 100%. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I agree with Councilmember McConaughey. I just had a couple questions, and I didn't see it in this one, so I don't know if the contract changed a little bit, but there was one that they, I think, needed to maintain workers' comp insurance, but if they're run by volunteers, is that really a requirement? But I'm not seeing it in this one, so I don't know if it got changed or updated.
You're referring to the lease agreement insurance provision that says 18E E2. The society shall indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the city, its officers, agents, employees, and volunteers from any and all claims involving workers' compensation and claims for injuries occurring upon or arising from the performance of this lease agreement. The society shall be solely and fully responsible for the payment of such claims. So essentially, the museum indemnifies the city from any workers' comp claims that may occur and would be claimed against the city. It does not require the museum to maintain workers' comp insurance, but whereas the museum has volunteers on their property, there's the theoretical possibility that a volunteer could get hurt and make a workers' comp claim. This would have the museum indemnify the city against such, but it does not require the museum to maintain workers' comp insurance.
Does workers' comp cover volunteers? My understanding
Workers' comp can apply to volunteers. Yeah, in fact, it usually does apply to volunteers. If we have people volunteering for the city and they get hurt while in the duty of performing volunteer service for the city, workers' comp would kick in.
So what would happen if a city employee is over at the museum doing some work and gets injured? Whose claim?
If they're a city employee and they're doing it on city time, it would be a city
Even if they're
comp
on the
claim.
museum property?
If they're there in the performance of their duty as a city employee.
Okay, and then the last question I had is we have this, the lease term is 2 years with the city's option to renew for an additional 4 two-year terms, but yet the city, and I think we ought to allow the society to be able to terminate within the same notice. But if we have an ability to, if the city has an ability to terminate the lease with 90-day notice and the society has an ability to terminate the lease with a 90-day notice, to me it would seem like trying to do 5 two-year terms is a lot of busy work, and we could probably just say it's a 10-year term. And maybe it's reviewed every 2 years to make sure that whatever needs the museum has, that we can have at least this dialogue. Are there things that we need to adjust? Does that sound reasonable, or?
That's up to you as a council.
Okay. That's the only questions I have at this point, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. So this comments are directed to council. You know I emailed you some of the changes that I suggested. And I guess my question is to council, do you have any comments or questions about some of those changes that I proposed? Or are there some, I like the ones that Chris added, so I'd be willing to add, I'm sorry, Councilman McConaughey added. I'd be willing to add those in addition to what I did there and move forward with that. I think that fulfills the requirements of the city and the museum. And I really don't want to postpone this after today because I think it's past time that they were back open again.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So Councilmember Burton, on your email, are your changes the yellow? The yellow in the document? Okay. Those are your choice, desires. Okay, got it. Okay. Here are my thoughts. I'd like to know from staff why we put in renewal every 2 years.
A couple of reasons. First, that was my understanding, the direction of the council. If that's changed, that's fine. We're happy to do whatever the council wants. Second, a renewal term every 2 years allows us to re-examine any provisions that aren't working for the museum or the city during those renewal terms. Third, it allows, as administration changes over the years, it allows for a reevaluation.
Thank you. And for those reasons, I think it's good to have it in there. It's just a good check and balance to make sure, because we don't know what those elected after us or those residing in our city in 10 years, 8 years will want. And so I don't have an issue with that provision. I kind of like it because I think it gives us a reason to have dialogue. Otherwise, we may not be having dialogue. I'm very uncomfortable with having the closure extend from November to New Year's. Because the reason I'm not in favor of that is because that's a big family time, and families may want to come to the museum, and we worked really hard to get the museum to be open to the public more, to address the points that Councilmember Lamb brought up, which I've felt the same way. When is that place ever open? And so for me to say that now we don't need it open when we worked so hard to work with the museum folks to have it open troubles me. I'm great with the logo. I think that's a good idea. And the web, I think we need to definitely leave open because I don't want to micromanage how they do that. And I think it's a good catch with the mayor's discretion because I don't necessarily want to leave that up to the mayor either. And my device is not letting me move it to look at the rest of yours. Oh, there it goes. Okay. And the other one that was brought up is that I do think it's fair that that you brought up, Councilman Burton, was that the museum folks should have the 90-day out as well as us. So I think that's a good addition. And I think those are all of my comments. I'm impressed by what I've seen at the museum. I appreciate what's been done. I think our history is important. I think it's something that our city struggles with because, as I learned, well, our Main Street is now located in Midvale. That's why we don't really have a Main Street, because we used to be one big happy group, and now we've divided into smaller chunks. And I think that we need something to help with our identity, and I think the museum is a good way to do that. So thank you for the work that you've done on this with the Dallies.
And I would speak in favor of this as well, with the exceptions that were added by Councilmember McConaughey and the other one that gives the museum also time to 90 days to terminate if they wish as well. Councilmember McConaughey.
Are you done?
I am.
Okay, I think I'm ready for a motion unless anybody else has any comments.
Go for it, try it.
Councilman McConaughey, may I make one comment because it was addressed by two council members, both for and against. On the provision about when the museum is closed for January and February and whether that should be extended or not, there's 2 points I want to call out. One, January and February were dates given to us by the museum as to when they have been closed upon recommendation from their property insurance company because they don't do snow removal on the site, and so it's dangerous conditions. You'll recall that provision says may be closed January and February and may be closed at other times if dangerous conditions exist. So if there are dangerous conditions in November, in December, in March, it allows for a closure for dangerous conditions.
I lost it here. Give me just a second. There was one other portion in that dangerous conditions where that was.
Sorry, it's 8B.
8B in the grant, and then it was also in that same paragraph was copied into the.
Yeah, it's 8B in the lease agreement, excuse me.
There we go. Yeah, that's the other thing I noticed. It said, at other times due to dangerous winter conditions. I would also propose, yeah, removing the word winter. So the version I put together does not include the word winter. Boy, I wish we had these two separated into two separate ones instead of lumped together, but I'll see if I can't make it work.
There are two separate resolutions.
They are, but they're kind of conjoined within the packets, so I'll,
Is your motion,
Let's
do you
do
want to
the-
make, Chris, do you want to make your motion for just 134 at this time?
no, I want to do the lease agreement first before we do the grant. It wouldn't make sense to do the grant before we've got the lease agreement. So I want to do 135 first.
Okay.
So I move,
I believe the lease agreement is 134.
That's what I was thinking too. I think I thought 134 was the lease agreement. And
it is. Which is funny because it's the second one in the packet. And it appears right after the voting, anyway, yeah. So I move to approve resolution 134 with the following changes. Number one, and I've got a copy of this that I can email to our recorder and staff and council. Paragraph, it's paragraph B in the grant, where is it here? 8B in the lease, 8B will say that the museum facilities may be closed during the time frame beginning the day before Thanksgiving through the end of February and may be closed unexpectedly at other times due to dangerous conditions. 5C, this would be a new, section 5 is the termination. We have A and B already. C is new. C would be adding the statement, society giving the city 90 days written notice of termination for any reason. Next, section 8, paragraph E, where it says currently it says the society shall create and maintain a website, and then goes on. I want to change that to the society shall maintain a website, removing the words create and. That way it gives the option for some flexibility. Section 16, names and logos. Appending to the end of this, it currently reads, city and society shall not use the other's name or logo in any manner that represents or implies any affiliation or relationship other than landlord and tenant. Appending that to add the verbiage, without a written agreement as allowed by paragraph 23, the amendment section of this contract. That is my motion.
I'll second that.
we have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Jacob. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember Whitelock.
So sadly, if we're going to add that from November to February, I will be voting against it. Not because I'm against it, but because I want the museum open and available. And I think the clause in there already covers if there's an issue.
Councilmember Burton.
There's a provision in here which Councilman McConaughey didn't mention, I think is important. It says if the contract terminates, then all the ownership of the buildings and artifacts, everything goes over to the city. I want to add into there that if it's under, if they're actively pursuing a renewal of the contract like we are right now, then as long as they're working on making that renewed, then it doesn't transfer the title of all those things and then transfer it back again at the time of the renewal. So I think that's too important to have in there, so I'd like to either have that added or I'll have to vote against this and we'll have to work over to get that in there because I think that's an important part of it.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. So a couple thoughts. With the Thanksgiving through February, it's the option to close for the option to not have to hold the regular open hours, which I think would open up more flexibility for families and people wanting to schedule special events there. It's not saying they have to be closed during that time, it's just saying they don't have to have regular hours. So if somebody wants to have like a small gathering or something like that, when it could potentially otherwise conflict with open hours, it does allow flexibility. The other one brought up by Councilmember Burton, I appreciate where things are coming from, but I like the idea of making sure both parties are working towards renewal of the agreement before the agreement lapses. And if for some reason, there are issues that preclude the current applicant from continuing with the museum, I want to make sure that those artifacts that they've worked so hard to acquire and procure can be preserved. So I think it's in the best interest of all to make sure that we're working for renewals prior. So unless there's some very clear language that you've got for something, I don't think I'd want to change that at this point.
This doesn't cover the
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I get what Councilmember Burton is saying. The thing for me is, it seems like if we wait until the end, the contract ends, now we're going to start again, that's almost like we're setting it up to do, when we ought to have the dialogue before the contract terminates. That's going to me, that's kind of why I was suggesting that going the 10-year, because we're going to be spending a lot of staff time every 2 years renegotiating a lease. And I get what Corbin was saying, that we want to be able to have a review, and I still think there's some language, but here's where we're at. So the things that I would like to see is, like with all of our contracts, not just the museum, that we're having this dialogue ahead of time, so we're planning ahead and we're setting a course ahead of time. And so I think we can achieve that same thing, Councilmember Burton, if the society and the council on all contracts can discuss them ahead of time. And again, that's why my reference to the 10-year, because I do think we're going to spend a lot of staff time every 2 years just making sure we've got the agreements in place. So that's my thoughts on that. Thank you.
And I'm going to jump in here too to make a comment about this. I'm in favor of this agreement with the changes that Councilmember McConaughey made, with the exception of the closing it from Thanksgiving on. So with that in there, I would vote no for this, but that's only for that one reason. So Councilmember Burton.
Thank you, Mayor. If I may answer Councilmember Anderson, I strongly agree. I would love to have them review their contract ahead of time. But an example of this past year and a half is an example of where they attempted to renew it ahead of time and it didn't happen. And the wording is in there, which takes away the ownership of certain things of them. So if there's some way we can preserve that ownership and not give it up to the city, we don't know what the city's going to do with that. Someone in the city may think it's worthless and discard it. I think that would be disastrous, and the Historical Society would have no say on it when we get to point. And it may not be the Historical Society's fault that they haven't renewed their contract. So I like the 10-year as well, and we can go ahead and review over it every 2 years. I'm fine with that. But having to start over from scratch every 2 years for a $6,000 expenditure seems quite time-consuming.
Councilmember Anderson.
Just want to ask staff, David or Rob, the legal minds, if the contract ends and this clause has it revert back to city ownership, the city can't, even under the new form of government, it would still have to be surplus property. So the mayor or it couldn't, if it becomes ownership of the city, it's not like the city can discard it if we're actively trying to negotiate or surplus it, I guess is the better way. Can you help me clarify that?
You know, whatever the surplus property provisions are now and/or under the new form of government, they would have to be followed if the city was going to do anything with the property other than use it for public use.
And so, as Councilmember Burton had just suggested, you know, if it becomes our ownership, a council could say, we're gonna discard or surplus. We're gonna surplus this property. We typically do that quarterly, but it would still have to come before the council. There's no one that could just arbitrarily say we're surplusing these items. Is that correct?
Currently, that's correct. I'd have to look at I don't think we've gotten to the code changes yet on surplus property under the new form of government. You have some options there as a council as to how we write that.
So maybe there's a way to reverse this, that if we still have this provision in there, but maybe there's a way to reverse it so that the city, and this would obviously require either an amendment or a substitute motion, but there would be a provision that even if the assets become the city at the end of the contract, as long as there's active negotiation, you know, however that wants to be defined, that the assets remain with the society. Maybe there's a different way to, I mean, I don't know, I'm not an attorney, but is there a way that if the lease ends, that there's a way to protect the assets?
If you tell me what it is you want to have happen, I can write just about anything. If four of you say, we want this to be the result, I can write it in a way that that can happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Burton.
So what I want the result to be is the museum doesn't lose their personal artifacts at the termination of the contract. In fact, and it doesn't have a provision in here that if the contract expires and they renew the contract later, that it actually goes back to them. So I don't see that in there.
If, Councilman Burton, Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Sorry, I just want to interject one thing. There's nothing in this lease agreement that implies or should imply that in any way do the artifacts of the museum become the property of the city. The artifacts of the museum are the museum's property. They've been received by the museum. You're talking about the facilities, which is the buildings that sit on the land that the museum is leasing.
Councilmember Burton, you're still up?
Yeah, I'm reading over this to verify Corbin's words. Perhaps that was another version that had artifacts in there then, and my memory still says that. Is that true?
If you take a look,
I don't believe so. It shouldn't have been. It was never intended that this lease apply to the artifacts in any way.
it's paragraph 11 of the
Yes,
lease.
I'm looking at paragraph 11, and you're
Only
right.
thi-
I
it's
don't
only
see
thing
word
affixed to
artifacts
the
in
real
that paragraph
property.
anywhere. So it's just the facilities themselves, the buildings,
Correct.
regardless of which building it is, be all of them. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
So, sorry, I just want to go back to the hours again. It's simply 10 hours a week. I just don't think that's going to impede families from being able to use the museum. And I would really like to see it open when the weather's good, which usually in November and December in Utah, it's not too bad till almost Christmas. So I wish we could take that part out so that I could support it.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I just have the clerk read back the specific wording from that part of the motion that has to do with the closures? I thought I heard it, but from the discussion, I think I might have not heard it correctly.
So I've got the copy right here, all set, ready to go. So I had written it that the museum facilities may be closed during the time frame beginning the day before Thanksgiving through the end of February, and may be closed unexpectedly at other times due to dangerous conditions. That's the end of it. The way that it read before was the same, where it said maybe during this time frame and also dangerous winter conditions.
Thank you. I had misheard that, so I appreciate that.
Seeing no further discussion, let's vote on this motion.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Mayor Riding,
No.
Councilmember Jacob,
No.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
No.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson.
Yes.
Vote passes 4-3.
Okay, we'll go to consent items. 6.
If I,
Do we want to
Mayor,
consider the grant?
I'm sorry, yes, we do have the grant one. That was the motion for just the lease. So the grant motion is up next.
So with that, I need to,
Councilmember McConaughey.
thank you, Mayor. I need to make sure this is the right one. So this is Resolution 19-135. I move to approve Resolution 19-135 with the following changes. The verbiage of Section 2, Paragraph B, match the verbiage from the contract, Section 8, Paragraph B. And the second change, for term, replace the phrase city mayors with cities. So that would read, all renewal terms shall be in the city's sole discretion.
Councilmember Burton.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Burton. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Now,
Hey,
we'll move
Mayor, could I interject something? I'm sorry, you didn't see my, this is the problem with drafting these things on the go. If you really want the council to have control of that in the new form of government, it needs to read city council. Because the new mayor, as the chief executive, would have the administrative authority to renew this or not. So I would say city council, not the city's discretion, the city council's discretion, if that's your intent.
So do we need to make a new motion and vote on that again?
So, if I may.
Go ahead.
I thought about that momentarily, and I thought the term city would be a little bit more ambiguous and imply that the city council would be working with the mayor. I recognize that the mayor does have rights and authorities that are separate from the city council. So rather than try to completely take it away from the mayor, it seemed like a good middle ground that did not imply that this is something only being done by the mayor, that the council has no right to really discuss or have any decision on, which is what I got when I read that city mayor's sole responsibility or sole discretion. So having changed that to city, I felt like it no longer implied something that I was uncomfortable with. So that I'm still comfortable with the cities.
Thank you. And thank you, Rob. I have not been asked to pull any consent items this evening. So anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. Not a motion yet, but a comment. I found it a little bit more difficult to go through the list of consent items this time. I miss having the dollar of value associated with each one of them on the agenda. It made it a little bit easier as I was trying to get my bearing on different things and kind of weigh the severity and significance of each. I would ask if we could have that added back. It used to be there, but I'd like to see the dollar amount added back next to each one of those consent items in the future.
And that's not a bad idea. You got to look it up in each staff report, so otherwise. So
Some of them are buried in there.
it's a good idea. Councilmember Anderson.
Seeing no other comments, I agree with Councilmember McConaughey, but I'll move to approve consent items 6A as in alpha through 6J as in, I don't know, Jacob.
I'll second with the clarification, that's all of them, right? Okay, second.
J is Juliet, by the way. So we have a motion by Councilmember Anderson, a second by Councilmember McConaughey. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey. Aye. Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Mayor Riding,
Yes.
and Councilmember Burton.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Move on to item 8A, business item. Discussion and possible action regarding resolution 19-133, setting the 2019 property tax rate for the city of West Jordan. Denise.
I recognize that you've asked that PowerPoints be put in early, but I thought of this today, so sorry. Bear with me for a moment. I wanted to give a slight history of the tax rate here in West Jordan. This includes debt service, so it's as much as our residents would pay. And I wanted you to note that the furthest column over is the tax rate that you'll be adopting tonight. It's .001999. It's lower than the tax rate from 2018 because we've seen slight growth in our city of about 2.8%. And so our tax rate adjusts based on that growth, as well as an increased percentage of collection rate, which will also decrease our rate a bit. So the rate decrease is 6.6%. Average growth in our community for residential properties is about 2.8%. So I thought this was interesting. This tax rate's the second lowest in the last 10 years. So you're adopting that.
Mayor, I have a quick question, if I may.
Yeah, we're just going to open it up to questions now from council, and you're first. So.
Just a quick one. I know you probably weren't done, but just a quick question on that. You mentioned growth is what led to the decrease in rate. Isn't it increased property values that lead to?
That's what I
decrease in
meant by,
rate?
I'm sorry, inflationary growth.
Inflationary
Thank
growth,
you.
not growth of the city.
Not growth of the city, because
Right,
that
okay.
already gives us additional revenue, so thank you.
No problem. Property
You're right.
tax is hard enough for most people to understand anyway. I
The
just
word
wanted to make sure.
inflationary needed to be there.
Awesome. Thank
So
you.
yes, the value of your currently owned property that was on the 2018 rolls increased 2.8%, which pushes our rate down. In addition, our collection rate increased, so we went to 97.8%, and that will also push our rate down as well. So those things were properties that were standing in 2018 that affect 2019. And in addition, we will have additional revenue that will bring in because of new growth. So thank you, Councilman Jacob. The next thing I wanted to show you is how we compare to all the other cities in Salt Lake County. I omitted a couple of cities, but they're like Bluffdale or Mill Creek, some of those small cities. But for the most part, these are the cities that are in Salt Lake County. The ones in green are the ones that have declared that they're going to truth in taxation. Sandy City's doing a 34% tax increase, and Salt Lake City's doing a 2% tax increase. So very small in Salt Lake City. We're in the blue here. We are smack in the middle. So I think that that's a very responsible tax rate. I think it's a good place for us to be. We're right under South Jordan and right above where Cottonwood Heights are. All of these rates also only represent the general operations of the city. They don't add any of the debt service. So our rate's a little higher than what's on this chart. It's 1999, but that 0.98 is for debt service for the general obligation bond that we issued in 2016. These rates also include if they are members of Unified Police or Unified Fire, because I want to compare apples to apples. If they've got a special district providing public safety, then they should we should be representing that as their tax rate. So all of that work has been done, but I thought that it would be interesting for you to know where we stand with other cities in our community. With that, we will present resolution 133, or no, I'm sorry, which number is it? 133, to you, adopting tax rate .001999. That includes the debt service for the general obligation bond. It is reducing our tax rate from the 2018 property tax levy by 6.8%, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Councilmember McConaughey.
I'm ready for motion unless there's comment from others, but not seeing anyone's mic light up. Oh. It looks like he's ready for a second, so I'll move to adopt resolution 19-133.
Councilmember Burton.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Burton. Discussion to the motion. Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo the comments earlier towards our finance department for all the work and effort that they put into the budget this year, specifically to Ms. Steck for her work cleaning things up. So, thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, let's vote.
Councilmember McConaughey?
Aye.
Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
And Councilmember Lamb?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Item 8B, discussion and possible action regarding ordinance 19-20, amending the 2009 West Jordan Municipal Code, Title III, Revenue, Finance, and Taxation by modifying the procurement process, records management, and other technical changes. David Bricky.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Starting Monday, next week, we will have a new procurement manager officer starting for the city. This is just a glimpse at what we need to do to accomplish meeting with SideQuest's expectations. The entire procurement process will be tackled over the next couple months, but this one right now addresses an issue that's popping up because we are trying to eliminate some of the confusion about what packets need to look like when they're submitted. By using SideQuest, bidders have to submit every portion of the bid at the same time they finally hit enter. If they forget something, it will not allow them to make a final bid. But the problem became when you submit it through SideQuest, we're not opening those bids here in the city, like we have traditionally in the past opened here on the third floor. So this is just a temporary fix to help us accomplish for the next 6 months when we go into the final phases of developing all the code changes for the new form of government. Ms. Steck and the new employment officer working with the city attorney's office, as well as Public Works, we're going to finalize a bid process that we've seen as many as 4 different processes into a single process. So that's kind of a background and the legal aspects, if I could address or have, that habit. Mr. Wall, the city attorney, answer those questions.
Thank you, Council. If you'll take a look at the legislative version of this, the red line or the black line version, go down to paragraph 3-1-3C1, sealed bid process, and it's subparagraph E. It says bid opening, receipt of bids. Let me just explain one thing. There's a very distinct difference between bids and proposals. And one of the things that we're trying to clarify, both in the code and in practice, is the tendency to mix those together. Sealed bids are single dollar quotes on designed projects where there's no subjective proposals. For example, you design a road and you build the road and you get a unit cost per linear foot, or you get a cost to build the road. Proposals are everything else, where you're asking the proposer to not only give you a price, but you're also evaluating perhaps the type of product they provide. the timing in which they'll do it, those sorts of things that can be very subjective and negotiated. So what this change does, first of all, it changes the location to which the bids are submitted. Currently, the code says they have to go to the city recorder's office or the city clerk. That's not the way that SideQuest works. The bids are actually received by SideQuest. Now, if a circumstance arises where you as a council or the staff on recommendation to you want to have those bids received here, that can happen. This gives us the option. But right now, the current language would not let us implement SideQuest. So that's the first change. And then if you go down to the next page on that legislative copy, under alternatives to sealed bids, this preserves the language where sealed proposals stay confidential until you've had a chance and the staff's had a chance to review them, and then those are disclosed at council meeting. Philosophically, the reason you do that is typically sealed proposals contain sometimes proprietary business information, or they contain methods as to how the proposer came up with the proposal that would be unfair for other proposers to see. And so that's why in the industry, proposals are treated differently than bids in terms of public disclosure and the timing of making those available. That's already in the code, and so we're preserving that. We're moving it to this part under request for proposals where it fits better. Before, it was just kind of hanging out in a place that didn't make sense. And then the last change is if you go to the third page, 3.1.17, there are 4 subparagraphs there. Paragraph D is the sealed proposals. That's the language we just moved up to the proposal section. And then if you'll notice, the main change here, in B, for example, quotations and C sealed bids required that after they're received, they'll be available for public inspection. Well, that can be true, but with SideQuest, they're submitted online. And so they're not necessarily immediately available for public inspection. That then is an additional step that if the city decides they want to make those available, which you can do, then the city either on its own website or in SideQuest submits that information in, for example, a bid tabulation form, and that would be public. Currently, as this is written, again, the finance department wouldn't be able to implement SideQuest. So that's the legal reason for those 3 changes, or the one moving of the sealed proposal language and then the 2 changes in submitting bids to the recorder and when sealed bids will become publicly available.
Okay, we have council questions, starting with Councilmember Anderson.
I just had one, Rob, up on 313, paragraph A, procedure defined. We're making these kind of changes, and I don't think we need to make any other changes, but I do think it should say the city executive administrative purchasing procedure, or something like that.
And the reason we haven't changed that is that we're going to be coming to you with the changes that will apply to the new form of government. So in the new form of government, it'll actually be the chief executives, which now is city manager. January 6th, it'll be the mayor.
So we're going to make this change to just be compliant.
So we can implement SideQuest now.
And then we'll revisit this again for the form of
The
government.
entire purchasing code. And that is a good example of the numerous changes that we need to make, not just for the change of government form, but also the process itself.
Okay.
Overall.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember McConaughey.
Thank you, Mayor. There are a number of references, both in the staff report and in the comments that we've heard about changing our code so that we can support SideQuest. It almost sounds as if we're changing code to support a specific vendor. I just want to confirm that we did look at multiple online bid options, and this isn't just for one specific vendor. We would have made these changes for whoever happened to win the bid, or am I mistaken?
I guess I defer that to Ms. Stack. You're asking if we looked at other online bid
It sounds
providers.
From the conversation, one could get the impression that we're changing code to suit one particular vendor, and I just wanted to clarify that that's not what we're doing.
Good question, great question. It's to accommodate the online service that we selected to do this. The changes are to accommodate technology and online bidding. generally. Whatever service we had selected, these changes would have been necessary. Is that better?
Thank you. That's the clarification I wanted, because one listening could get the impression that we're just doing this for this one particular person, and I didn't believe that was the case, so thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, we'd accept a motion. Councilmember McConaughey?
Move to approve ordinance 19-20.
Councilmember Anderson?
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey, a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Mayor Riding,
Yes?
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey,
Without even making any changes to the proposed ordinance? Yes.
Councilmember Burton,
Aye.
Councilmember Jacob.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
We will now move to the workshop, item 9 on the agenda.
May we take a break first, Mayor?
We have a motion to take a break. All in favor for a 7-minute break, say aye. Aye. We will take a 7-minute break. Ray J? What? Where?
Anyway, the reason why I'm calling, is we invite you to speak at our exchange course in July.
In July? Yeah, on what?
On your stance, campaign.
Oh, sure. The Why I'm Running?
Yeah.
Yeah, what date? July. Let me look. 1 minute. Going back to our city council meeting, item 9A, workshop. Review proposed ordinance changes for West Jordan Municipal Code Title I, Chapters 5 through 8, and 11 through 12. Duncan Murray. Or is this Corbin?
In Duncan's absence, let me just comment on this. This is just in preparation for tomorrow night's work session with the council. All we're going to do is review these sections of the administrative code in preparation for the change of the form of government.
So all of this is covered for tomorrow night?
All this is covered for tomorrow night. You all got, I hope you all got from Duncan the email showing that the feedback and the comments he's received from different council members, and he has taken your feedback and modified the proposed language according to that feedback. So that's where we'll begin our discussions for tomorrow evening.
Additionally, we were contacted by one of the candidates just asking if they could see the packet, and I made a decision, kind of an executive decision, and asked Jamie to put it on that page that all 19 candidates, if a question's asked, then we post the answer. So they're now posted. It's more of a sort of ability for everyone to see what the discussion might be looking like tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. So then there's no further discussion. Is there from council on this issue for tonight? I mean, open mics, right? Council. So just go ahead and speak up if you. If not, we'll go to remarks. Councilmember Lamb, did you?
I was going to say, it looks like there's no discussion, so I'd move to remarks.
Okay, so Councilmember Whitelock.
So I have a couple tonight. At one point, I had asked that the council get what the department head salaries are, and I haven't seen that yet. So could we still get that, please? And then the other is, are we going to apply for any of the Wasatch Front Regional Council Safe Routes to School funding, the grants that's coming out?
I'm wondering if
I'm
that's
sorry,
a Dave Murphy question.
what was the question? I apologize.
The question is, are we going to apply for any of the Wasatch Front Regional Council grants that are available for the safe walking routes?
We certainly can. I have not looked at anyone in particular. That's also part of that procurement grant application process. We don't have at the present time. Chuck Carver does do a lot of the grant applications. We're expanding some of his job responsibilities. We can certainly get that as an additional request that he start looking at those additional grants.
Well, I know that safe walking routes are all turned into the police department every year, and that the school community councils work on those. And every year, almost every school has it would sure be nice if we had a sidewalk here or something there. So
I can check with Tyler. He may have already started looking at. Sorry,
Brian looks
Brian
like
Clegg
he's
wants
eager.
to.
So
he
just,
should talk.
just to clarify on that, Bill Baranowski and Dave Murphy both work on that every year. So
on the grant?
on the grant,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Seeing no further remarks from anyone, we will take a motion for a closed session. Councilmember McConaughey?
I move that we move to closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation, strategy session to discuss purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, including any form of water rights or shares, and then adjourn from there.
Could you repeat that, please?
Councilmember Anderson?
Second that motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember McConaughey and a second by Councilmember Anderson. Discussion to the motion. Seeing none, let's vote.
Councilmember Jacob?
Yes.
Councilmember McConaughey? Councilmember Burton?
Aye.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock?
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb?
Sure.
Mayor Riding?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.